So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 65 of the Adam Makes Beer podcast. Check out the playlist tab on the Adam Makes Beer YouTube channel. Tons of stuff on there. Full brew days, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like my camera's jumping for some reason. Hopefully that's not coming through on your end. And this, because I do feel like my camera's jumping a little bit, let me know here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know if everything's looking and sounding good while we're in here. If September and June is in here, he's going to tell me he can't hear anything. But I do feel like I see the video flickering a little bit. Let me know if it's good on your side. But listen, there's tons of stuff over there on the Adam Makes Beer YouTube channel. Tutorials, all that good stuff. Interviews. We got what you need if you're a brewer that wants to grow. Remember, content creation is my full-time gig. So if you're getting value and have the means, please consider a channel membership for less than a cup of coffee a month. Shout out to all my wonderful channel members. You help to keep the lights on around here. Also, I really appreciate you sharing my Instagram content, Facebook content, TikTok, anything that you see, any of my short stuff. I appreciate you sharing that around to folks that would be interested. If you are in need of consultation services, I do hands-on stuff coming out, working with you in your brewery, on your equipment, helping you improve quality and safety practices. Holla at me, because I do it. My Instagram and LinkedIn have like a one-sheeter in my link tree that'll kind of show some of the stuff that I do right there. And if you have, I'm going to be doing live reads here in just a second. If you're looking for some unique ways to feature your brand, hit me up. Shoot me a message on Instagram or something. All right, and we'll work on some ad deals, baby. We might be seeing some new people entering the fold when it comes to helping to support the channel here. So that should be fun. A couple of things. It's been wild lately. My son got married this past weekend. Not the Theo Von podcast. It was beautiful, man. He's my oldest. Found a wonderful woman, shared faith. They love each other, and her family is amazing. What I find with life is that it is, and maybe it's just been my experience. Don't get me wrong. I've had my fair share of mistakes and deep pain, but I tell you, some of the joys that I've been blessed with, it's almost overwhelming. You know, you get married. Path for me was I got married, we had kids, all beautiful things, but to see to see your son getting married, to see the family that he's marrying into love him like he's one of their own. It's a powerful thing, man. It'll change your heart. I told him I don't know if anything has brought me more joy than that. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. Anyways, if you didn't know, your boy turned 48 this month. The day after my son got married was my birthday. Shout out to everybody on Facebook and Instagram that hit me up with the birthday wishes. It's much appreciated. 48 is an odd animal, and especially to kind of have it happening right around your son getting married too. It's probably not age specific, but it was more probably the wedding. Yeah, what do you need? I hear small feet running around outside the office. My little ones are supposed to be in bed right now. Yes, I do have enough kids to where I have a 23-year-old getting married and then a 4-year-old, his little pitter patter feet coming up to the door trying to escape bedtime. Anyway, but yeah, 48 years young. To quote the late great Anthony Garuba, 48 wasted years. I've always loved when he told me that. He's my uncle, and I love him, and I miss him. Some ways you can support. Do you see it? Do you see it? Adam Makes Beer, AMB, helping brewers grow. What's good, baby? It's in the Adam Makes Beer store, merch store. Check it out. I might need to get a link to that back up somewhere again. I think I need to refresh that in my link tree. It's a nice way to help me out. For merch shirts, they're not too bad. They're like $19.99. So it's reasonably priced. Go ahead and show your boy some love with a little shirt purchase if you are so motivated. And then last pod, I mentioned that we had a flood here. We are now on week 5 of no air conditioning, furnace, or hot water heater. But it appears as if things will be getting resolved here pretty soon. That's nice. We did have flood insurance. So, our water bill has definitely gone down because when you're just taking, thankfully it's summer and the ground temperature water isn't that bad. It's definitely colder than you want it to be. But yeah. So water bill has gone down. Electric bill has gone up. But it was a huge blessing. One day I just came home after a few weeks of us being without air conditioning. And there were just 3 window air conditioning units out in front of my house. Nobody's ever taken credit for it. So shout out to whoever did that. That was a lovely thing. That was a lovely thing. But listen, you guys, let's pay some bills by talking about a couple of good friends of mine. Starting a brewery is a big step. Blickman Engineering is here to help. Since 2006, they've equipped hundreds of nano breweries for success. Their new 3.5 barrel Pro Surface electric brewing system cuts maintenance and saves at least 30 minutes per brew with powerful under kettle heating. From 1 to 15 barrel brew houses to keg washers and grain mills, Blickman has what you need. Ready to go pro? Contact Phil or Tom at ProSeries@BlickmanEngineering.com. Again, that's... Oh, wait. Blickman Engineering is a proud sponsor of this channel and loves to help brewers at every stage of their journey. And they love to support me even when I don't get the live read completely right. Tracking and managing the financial health of your brewery is a primary pillar of success. I was just talking to David today via textual messaging. Check out my boy David Lentz at Brewed Fiscally. This man has the industry experience and skills you need so you can focus on growing your business. Bookkeeping, fractional CFO support, financial management system design, business plan review, hit up your boy. Check him out at brewedfiscally.com or shoot him an email at david@brewedfiscally.com. He's good people. Adam Makes Beer News. Like I said before, I have been busy. We had my son's wedding. We had my father-in-law here for a couple weeks, and just stuff every weekend. And a few weeks ago, I was at the Catholic Content Creators Conference in Steubenville, Ohio, my alma mater. And great conference. Met up with a lot of people, learned a lot of things. And so hopefully you may be able to see me stepping up my game in this last half of 2025 here. From a content standpoint, Little Miami, I'm going to have a brew day with Little Miami Brewing in Mara, Ohio. This Monday, I'm going to be over there brewing. That brew day will not pop online until later. That will probably be released in September because this month we are rolling out the brew day that I did with my friends at Oh, wait, did I say it wrong? The Little Miami Brew Day is out now. It's posted now on YouTube. Check it out if you haven't. We're brewing Hefeweizen, talking SOPs, brewery layout, tips and tricks for keg washing, all sorts of cool stuff, brewery floor stuff. So that was my Little Miami Brew Day. That stuff is out now, but Monday I'm going to be brewing with Depot Brewing and Morrow if I got those crossed up. You're not going to want to miss that when that drops, and that'll be dropping in September. Speaking of content dropping, check out the pods with Dr. Matt Winans of Fermentus. That is quickly shooting to the top of my all-time listened, viewed podcast on Spotify. It's a great one. Don't miss out on Antonio Sanchez, aka Wort Wrangler over there, and many, many more. Next week, I'm going to be chatting with somebody who sometimes it's kind of strange. You meet somebody a couple times, but you know them from the internet. You know them from a podcast. I came up as a brewer listening to the Brewing Network, and I've listened to more hours of Justin Crosley talking about brewing and interviewing people and a bunch of other nonsense that he might have talked about over the years than maybe anybody should. But he's going to be on the Industry Pro podcast next week. I'm really excited to talk to him because even though like it's one of these things, sometimes when I see people at conferences or whatever, they'll say, oh, I feel like I know you. This medium has that interesting thing to it, right? Where you can just get on here, be yourself, and other people can know some stuff about you. But, Justin has done so much for me, even if it's kind of like indirectly, right? But he's done so much for me on my path. And I want to have a talk with him where his career walk has taken him in craft beer, what he's seeing out there. For those of you that don't know, he runs the Brewing Network podcast, which is where I've learned the super majority of what I know about brewing, all the nuts and bolts, but my 14 years of brewing professionally brewing has taught me a lot too, but all my fundamentals came from that podcast. And then he also owns and operates the Hop Grenade, which is a craft beer bar out by him. I don't remember exactly where it is right now. It's one of those little California towns. I can't remember for sure. Maybe it's Concord, which I would say Concord, but I think they say Concord. I don't know. Don't get me started. So I'm going to be talking to Justin, and that's going to be very cool. You won't want to miss that. As always, I've actually skipped a pod. I was going to be doing a career development podcast the week that my son got married, but things were bonkers, and I didn't have time to do it. So rather than going crazy, trying to remain relatively balanced, I stepped back, and I didn't do it. But I will be. They will be back in the fold here soon. But I am looking for feedback on those. So if you are checking those episodes out, let me know what you think. It's a little bit different extension of what I'm usually doing with the technical stuff here. So just let me know. Just let me know. And also, who's going to GABF? Are you out there? Are you going to GABF? I think I am. If the stars continue to align, I will be going to GABF. I feel like the color of my shirt is pulsing in and out. I'm working with a little bit different equipment, people, but stay patient with me. Dancing Squirrel Brewing, what's up, man? Finally doing an evening gig. Yeah, thank you. Hard to catch you in the early hours. Yeah, man. Good to see you. Good to see you in here. Make sure to drop any questions, topics, anything else in there. And I know I see a few more eyeballs in there lurking. Make sure to say, hey, tell me where you're listening from. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you got in the fermenter. But what I'm looking for with GABF. So my hang up is this. I've been excited. I've been accepted to go as a media member to GABF, and what I would like to be able to do is I would like to be able to record some hyper short content inside the festival itself. But I'm running into some snags because they might not want to have people recording video inside of there, but it's kind of what I do is record video places. So I'm appealing to their better nature. Maybe they'll help me out and they will allow me to do that. But I am also looking for some people because GABF is in the afternoon, evening, ladies and gents. I am going to be there the whole time, all day, every day. So I've already talked to one brewery, and we're kind of like early stages. But I would love to do on Thursday, Friday. I would love to do brew days with some local Denver breweries, just for sake of getting around. I wouldn't mind it being close to the convention center because that's probably where I'm going to be located. But yeah, if you are connected to a brewery there, or you have some people that are connected to a brewery there and you think they might be interested in doing a brew day video with me, it's an interesting way to be able to show people and your brand on social media and on the YouTubes. Some long form content, baby. So yeah. What else? I think that's it. What else? How about a little sip here? Like I said, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We've got a handful of things to talk about. I really have some hair sticking up. I don't know what's going on anymore. My hair is a lot longer than it used to be, and it's growing more powerful. Brad finally made it back. What's good, Brad? Good to see you in here. Well, listen, ladies and gents, they call this the live stream Q&A for a reason. You've got questions, I've got answers. You got topics. Sometimes people just be like, hey, Adam, what do you think about this? I'll be like, hey, man, this is what I think about it. Okay. So drop any questions or topics into the chat and we will get rolling. I've got a few holstered up here though to get us rolling as the chat heats up, as that viewer number continues to climb. First question. Oh, what have I done? I don't know. I don't know who wrote this in. So, because I didn't write the person's name down, so I apologize. But first question, first topic is discussing low ABV beer. And we're going to be touching on this a couple of times in this episode. I've had a couple of questions that come up a lot around this. And maybe I don't have a question or a name because maybe this was it was like a LinkedIn post or something that I saw where people were talking about 2.5% beer. They were out traveling. I forget where they were traveling, but they were drinking 2.5% lager and they were loving it. How come it doesn't catch on everywhere? And it got me thinking just on the topic of 2.5% beer and how they're making that happen. I'm going to give you two hunches, a couple of approaches. If you're thinking about doing something like that in your pub, here are a few quick notes on it that you can kick around and maybe implement if you are looking at kind of pushing that like super session beer in your place. So kind of the first thing I think about is, okay, so how is a beer like that brewed? You can actually just go very low level of grain, So just drop your original gravity or your original density low enough that'll ferment out to 2.5%, right? That's like just the way you would adjust any recipe up and down by adjusting your grain bill. You could do that, but I think the more compelling way to approach this is to utilize something that we've talked about before on the channel, which is a water bag. Okay. So thinking about making a standard strength beer, something between 4 and 5%, but let's keep our numbers really, really clean and just go with 5%. We're all used to making 5% beers. You know, we've all done it before. I'm assuming if we're out there making beer, it's a very standard ABV for a brewski, as some people like to say. You can ferment that beer out, build it, just kind of riffing here, like you would think, like with twice the IBU that you would expect for something like that. You know, I would do some digging on some of these 2.5% beers and see what IBU they have in there, because remember, there is kind of that gravity to bitterness ratio, or that density to bitterness ratio that you can kind of follow. So if you're making a beer style where, you know, it's like a 2-to-1 situation, right? Where, you know, you would have like 25 IBU in like a 1050 beer, or we can convert that to Play-Doh any way you want, right? Whatever makes you feel more professional. That would kind of be your bitterness to gravity ratio. My guess is you're probably going to want to maintain that ratio as you dilute it down. So you're going to have that situation where, you know, as we've discussed before, you're going to want to build out that beer to be balanced at 5%, and then cup that with deaerated water. That deaerated water, I prefer to boil, acid adjust it down to the same pH that you want your beer to be at, that your finished beer is at. As you are knocking out that water, that deaerated water from your kettle through your heat exchanger, I would replace the oxygen on your oxygen stone post heat exchanger and hook up CO2 through that and rip some CO2 through that. You should be putting it into a clean and sanitized bright tank, I'm assuming, because, you know, your base beer is already in there. You've put your base beer in that bright tank, and then you're going to dilute. I've also done it to where I have put that water into a clean, sanitized tank that is also purged. But I've also sometimes had some residual O2 still in that liquid. And so sometimes I'll strip it through a carb stone, bubbling up through the bottom, venting through the top, some stuff like that. Just some things to think about. But kind of a shout out there to anybody who is making beer that small. Are you just running, you know, lower grain bills, smaller grain bills? Are you water backing in a situation like that? You know, the interesting thing is, you know, you can make a lot more beer doing that. It's an interesting way to do it. And you know, maybe a 50% cut is too big for what you want to do. Maybe 33% would feel a little bit better. Maybe that would maintain a little bit more soul of the beer, right? So you would just adjust things accordingly. But I would do a deep dive on get some of those 2.5% beers that you're enjoying. Look at if you can, degas one and find out what the residual sweetness or density is, and do that. And then what's the other thing? What's the other thing that I would recommend? My video's jumping and it's got me a little sketched out. So it just distracted me a little bit. But then degas it, get pH, get the density on it, but then also drink it and then kind of see, look on the label or look online what the IBU is on that beer. And that way you can kind of structure things around that. That's one of the ways that I like to build conceptually what I'm doing recipe wise is using known things as a reference point. All right. I'm tempted to do something here. I'm tempted to switch my camera and my microphone really quick, the ports, because I have my camera port in another device, and I don't want it to screw up the stream. I don't want it to screw up the stream. So anyways, that's my take on this 2.5% thing. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat if you have a different take on it, or if you have explicit experience with it. I would love to hear what people are out there doing with those beers. Please excuse my pronunciation, but Cerveza Misioneros, welcome to the chat. And you got a question for me. When doing a diacetyl rest, do you recommend doing it under pressure? And if so, leave the yeast inside the unitank or harvest right away when the beer is done fermenting? So, Cerveza, great question. And at the heart of this is kind of what I do for a diacetyl rest. So the big idea behind a diacetyl rest is you will let the fermentation warm up past the standard point of fermentation. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're using a British strain that is known to kick a little diacetyl. And so potentially you are fermenting that at 68 degrees F or 20 degrees C. I believe that's the conversion. And then you let that creep up a couple of degrees toward in the last quarter of fermentation. Okay. So some people would see that as kind of like a diacetyl rest, where you allow it to warm up to help that yeast stay active up in suspension. As the volume of sugar is decreasing, they're going to be looking for other byproducts that they can reconsume and clean up. Diacetyl, or a butter, a movie theater butter type impression, is something that comes across as. Also, there can be a slickness on the palate. So that's what I would do, is I would allow it to warm up a couple of degrees at the end, toward the end of fermentation, and that can help you get you through that diacetyl rest. I do not like to have the temperature go down or harvest until that beer has passed diacetyl. That is diacetyl free. Man, I'm glitching a lot on video. I'm sorry, everybody. Hopefully it's not driving you crazy. It's the last time I'm mentioning it. But hopefully it all still looks good on your side. Chat, let me know if it's a minor thing and it's just freaking me out. But anyways, that's how I do that. I want the yeast in there. Now, sometimes I will do like a trube drop, a cone shave, where I will drop the bottom out of the tank a little bit in the early portion of fermentation. Don't take this as my guide for that. Search for some other things like cone shaving on the channel, and we can get into that. So but yeah. Anyways, that's what I would do. But once I have passed, once my beer is passing a diacetyl test, it's no longer displaying diacetyl or butter aromatically or on the palate. I will get that cooled down and get that yeast off of there. But that's how I roll. Okay, that's how I roll. So Cerveza, good to see you in there. Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, good luck. Let me know how it goes. Brett is in here. He's got a little question. He says, I'm trying to brew a low ABV hazy IPA in the 4% range and still have that nice pillowy mouthfeel that regular higher ABV ones have. Would it be crazy to add a hefty amount of maltodextrin? All right. This is a great question, man. And this is something that I could probably do some learning with. I could grow in this area. There was a beer that I made that I thought was nice when I was at Cartridge, and it was called Pathfinder. And the goal was always to kind of have it be like a softer, hazy pale ale. And I struggled to hit the mark with it. And I mean, the beer was tasty and everything like that, but that was still a period of time where I was struggling with maintaining haze in my beers. So, you know, I've conquered that a little bit in the meantime with some things that I've learned. But, you know, we're talking about this pillowy, soft mouthfeel, and does maltodextrin get you there? And, you know, it's interesting because I did use maltodextrin in that beer when I was trying to beef up the body on it, because it did finish pretty low, you know, when you're not starting a beer at, you know, at 1070 or, you know, 1065 or whatever that is on the Plato side. It's been a minute since I thought in Plato, but you know, it's going to be hard to get that residual sweetness, which does help to prop things up on the body side. I've never been successful with utilizing maltodextrin to make that happen. Now, the numbers were there. My residual sweetness was higher, but if you drank it blind, you wouldn't have guessed that it was that. You would have guessed it was drier, or that I didn't do anything with maltodextrin in it. So that was always frustrating to me. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is I would look at maybe getting aggressive with your oat/flaked rye. I love flaked rye as potentially one of the most viscosity forward flaked grains. You know, there's a limit to how much you can be using. I would prefer to use flaked as opposed to malted, because I find they're less earthy than the malted product, but that's just me. You might want to look at, and this might be a little bit of apostasy because I don't generally recommend doing things like this, but maybe looking for a really low Lovibond crystal malt. There is one that I liked quite a bit from Malt Europe, and it was called Crystal Wheat. It's a 3 Lovibond. That might be a way that you can get a little underlying sweetness with something that is a lower Lovibond crystal malt. And it would also fit in well with a higher protein level with the wheat in a beer style like that. But yeah, those would be a couple of things that I would play with. Remember, you don't want to be you want to be making sure that your IBUs are not too high in a beer like that, but also not too low because you don't want it flabby. And that can be a little bit tricky. But those are a few things that I would be playing around with. I'm actually going to be brewing a hazy pale with my buddies over at not Morrow Brewing Company, but they're in Morrow, Depot Brewing, this coming Monday. So I might pick up some tricks when I'm over there. But if anybody out there has any more kind of tips or tricks as far as it goes approaching that style, that's the way I look at it. So yeah, maybe a few things to think about, and yeah, keep grinding on it. Let me know. Let me know any tweaks that you make with that, and how it ends up working out for you. Cerveza, thank you for the kind words on the channel and everything like that. We always appreciate a little love bouncing around. Every once in a while, you know, you get somebody that that's a little grumpy with you in the comments. It's not often, but it's always nice to hear the nice things. Yeah, and Brad says a lot of commercial examples seem to fall short when it comes to light body and water. And because I do think those are some of the challenges. Because I do believe that style relies on higher residual sweetness. I mean, yeah, you can do them down at 2 Plato, 3 Plato, but a lot of the real hot boy ones out there are quite sweet. So yeah. Next question is from Dancing Squirrel Brewing. Dancing Squirrel, are you in Australia? If I'm remembering correctly, I may not be. I might not be correct, but you might be. Maybe you are in Australia if I'm remembering right. You're welcome, Brad. Dancing Squirrel says my favorite style to make is a Weizenbach Doppelweizen. Any great tips or tricks for the style? I make great ones, but can never quite reach the banana level like Aventinus and such. It's so interesting because I just spent time in 2 different breweries that have won GABF medals for brewing Hefeweizen, and they do 2 very different things. The one thing that I would say, you're going to hear people talk about the necessity of step mashing. That may be the case. But I've had some really great examples of the style that were not step mashed, and you can call me a fool or a charlatan or whatever, but it is what it is. Now, I've seen different people manipulate that yeast in different ways. I think some of the things that people don't always factor in, when I first started brewing, I always thought, well, it's like, well, I need a big, healthy pitch of yeast. I'll make sure it's oxygenated. I make sure I have temperature control. And super majority of the time, you can make awesome beers reliably doing that stuff. But then you start digging in, and I found that when I use big fat pitches with my Hefe style beers, they don't turn out right. And so I started doing a little digging, referencing some people, digging, tapping into some resources that I have, talking to some different skilled brewers. And I started hearing more and more, you need to cut your pitching right. I had somebody tell me, listen, cut your pitching rate in half, or maybe it was even 2/3, because it was a 15 barrel batch. And they said, maybe get a 5 barrel pitch and oxygenate, a third as much as you usually do. And it stressed me out, man. It gave me bubble guts, and it made me feel not well, because I am from the school of big fat pitches, yeast nutrient, fat oxygen, constant temperature control. But sometimes it doesn't always need a fat pitch. And I think that strain is one that you can go lighter on as far as pitching rate and oxygen. Now you're talking about brewing some big daddy wheat beers, right? Some great big strong ones. I've seen people get more banana out of what I just mentioned: a lower pitching rate, lower oxygenation level. I know some people also implement ripping fermentation temperatures. Okay, when I was at Little Miami, they're starting that beer in the high 80s F, maybe close to 90 F. For a few days, and then cooling it down to like 72 F, and then they roll from there. And I smelled their beer, man, and it's got a great banana character. It's on the higher end of the thing, but everybody has their path with it. Now, what you will want to be factoring in is this is kind of like for standard strength hef, where it might get a little tricky is the fact that you're talking about brewing some Big Daddy hefts, so big, strong, dense beers. I would get with your yeast manufacturer and talk specifically kind of about what we discussed and potentially lower pitching rates, but what might be a good fit for fermenting something like that, because you can do a harvest and a repitch, but you're probably going to want to catch it within the right window, because I do think that yeast strain is fussy. You can be dropping viability on it in a hurry. You just don't want to be throwing a whole bunch of half-dead yeast into a great big beer like that. So I would reach out to your people on the supplier side and game plan that a little bit. But I think those are some paths that you might be able to take that might kind of solve what you're looking for there. And those are great beers. How can you not love Aventinas? I had somebody in my comments say beer shouldn't smell like bananas. Sorry. And I said, I accept your apology, man, because some beers are supposed to smell like banana. Oh, you're Montana? Dancing squirrel. I thought you were like on the other side of the globe. Well, I mean, it almost is. It's not really. I mean, we're both in the continental, you know. But Montana, baby, God's country, big sky. Is that big sky out there? Is that big sky? I don't know. Let me know. Yeah, I see more people popping in here, viewing. Jump in the chat. Tell us what's good. Tell us how your week was. Tell us what you have in the fermenter. If you got a question or topic that you want to riff on, let me know. Drop it in there. Okay, so this was new to me. Maybe I'm just behind the curve, but I saw there's this guy from I don't know if it's John Hall, which I need to email back, by the way, John Hall. There's probably a 99% chance that you are not listening to this, but I'm going to have him on the Industry Pro at some point, but it got away from me. I need to email him back. But it was one of the folks that's in the craft beer journalism side of things, and they were talking about loxless barley, LOX, and I had not seen that, and their article was behind a paywall. And right now, additional subscriptions are not in my budget. So I did a little deep dive, baby, and I found some research, some resources, some scholarly stuff, and I'm going to drop it on you guys. Okay? Loxless barley. What is it? Loxless barley is a type of barley bred to have little to no lipoxygenase. It's LIPOXYGENASE. I'm probably going to butcher that, and my science smart people are going to be screaming at the screen. But yeah, big sky, baby. Big sky. But this loxless barley is bred to have little to no lipoxygenase enzyme activity, and they call that LOX, LOX. Okay. Why this matters in brewing. LOX is an enzyme present in normal barley that oxidizes polysaturated fatty acids during malting and mashing, producing aldehydes such as trans-2-nonanol, the compound responsible for cardboard/papery stale flavors in beer. Even if you package the beer perfectly, these compounds can still slowly develop over time, reducing shelf life. By removing or disabling the LOX enzyme genetically through conventional breeding, not genetic engineering, maltsters can reduce staling precursors from the start. What? You have my interest. Loxless barley varieties produce significantly lower levels of trans-2-nonanol precursors during wort production. Studies from the Journal of the American Society of Brewing Chemists, ASBC, show up to a 90% reduction in certain aldehyde precursors in wort compared to standard barley. Work by Bamforth and Kanauchi in 2004, so maybe this stuff has been out for a little bit, demonstrated that beers brewed with loxless malt retained fresher flavor for longer forced aging tests. Brewers have reported sensory stability improvements of several weeks to months depending on packaging and storage conditions. There appears to be no major impact on brewing performance. Mashing efficiency, lautering, and fermentation performance are generally unchanged. Some trials note slight differences, slightly different wort lipid profiles, but yeast health was not negatively impacted. There's been major producers, Asahi, Sapporo, Heineken, use loxless malt for global brands to maximize flavor stability in export beers. Craft breweries have started experimenting with these malts as well, particularly for pilsners, lagers, and beers that they want to be particularly low oxygen. Benefits for brewers: fresher flavor for longer shelf life, crucial for packaged beer shipping long distances, or really any distance. You want that stuff staying as fresh as possible. Reduced cardboard papery oxidation character over time, potentially less need for aggressive oxygen control in cold side processing, but not a replacement for good practice. I don't like that part of the blurb that I'm reading. It's always important. You would not want to slack on that. There's some different places who sell it, and I don't know how up to date this is, so you might want to reach out to your supplier. But Viking Malt has Pilsner Zero Malt. Belgio Malt has No OX Malt, and Prairie Malt has Loxless Malt. Okay, so maybe look at a few of those if that's something you're looking at playing with. I think it's interesting. I do have a link to a study here from MBAA, and I'm just going to read the abstract for you real quickly. And this might be a little bit of review, but of what I just said, but it has a couple of points in here that it doesn't. So be patient with me. Just so you know, if you have an MBAA subscription, this is under 155 improvement of beer flavor stability through the loxless barley approach. This is part of a malt and grain session. I'm just going to read you some of the abstract. A set of pilot scale 1,000 liter brewing trials was conducted in the R&D center of the Tsingtao Brewery Company Limited to investigate the effect of loxless barley malt on the flavor stability of beer. The results clearly indicate the loxless variety has less nonanol potential than the control, although their lox activities in malt were both relatively low. It was found that the beer brewed from the loxless barley malt contained much lower concentrations of T2N and gamma non-allanone, especially after the forced or natural aging of the beer, and those brewed under same conditions from the barley variety with normal lox activity. While the sensory panel indicated similar results in the general flavor profile, the freshness score of beer brewed from the test malt was higher than those from the control, especially after forced aging. I think I need to do a deep dive on forced aging. I need to learn more about it, and I want to help you out there that don't know about it. Another exciting finding was that the trial beer had much better foam stability. New information, from based on NIBEM value of almost 30 seconds. These results indicate that the use of loxless barley malt may be beneficial to beer flavor and foam stability. The loxless barley variety used was Polar Star, a new malting barley variety developed by the joint breeding program of Sapporo, Prairie Malt Limited, and the University of Saskatchewan. Metcalf barley malt was the control for the normal LOX activity. Super interesting stuff, I think. And, maybe it's been out there for a little bit, but it was new to me. Even if it's nothing that you're ever going to be using in your process, it's cool to know what is out there and how you might be able to leverage some different things. But anyways, if you know any more about that stuff, hit me up, or if you want any follow-up information, I do think I want to dive into and present some stuff next month for you for as far as forced aging goes, because I think there's some cool stuff in there that we can talk about. But anyways, that's the deal with LOXless malt. Loved everybody that's just joining us. Appreciate you making time. As always, pop in the chat, say hey, let us know how you're doing. What are you fermenting? What are you thinking about? What do you want to chat about? Next question comes from Grant on Instagram. Just some food for thought. Do you think Miller, AB InBev, and other industrial brewers make lagers in 6 weeks? Do you think they use Lutra or Nova lager strains, or just plain old lager yeast? You can make lager in ale time. Brewers get too caught up in the romance of cold fermentation and extended lagering times. I used to be guilty of it myself. All right. So Grant left this comment under, I believe it was one of the Little Miami shorts that I put on Instagram. And Jim, the head brewer there, had mentioned, a 6-week tank time for a lager. The interesting thing is with beer, somebody will say, well, it's 12 weeks for me in tank minimum. And then somebody else will say 6 weeks is too long. So a couple of things. There's a few layers here, Grant. And I think you bring up a valuable point. But there's also I'm going to give you some pushback as well, and a little bit of what my take is on that. I'm not certain if large macro beers, lagers, are fermented in 6 weeks. It may not be 6 weeks. I do know that large macro lagers are dealing with a range of technology that would blow my mind. And I've been doing this for 14 years professionally, brewing beer just overall for over 20 years. The technology and what they have access to in a brewery like that is fundamentally different than what most people have in craft beer. And it might be everyone in craft beer. All right. They have all the tips, all the tricks, all this fancy gear. Okay. So they have different things available to them that can help shave that time down if that is what needs to be happening there. The next part of what you said is, do you think they use Lutra or Nova lager? No, I don't. I don't. From my knowledge, they are using what you referenced as normal lager strains. There might be some ramping of fermentation temperatures. There might be some things that are done on that side. But yeah, what they have going on is very, very dialed in. I know you can make an ale, a lager in ale time. I see what you're saying, but I push back against the idea of saying that Lutra is passable as a lager. And I don't want to be like snobbish or anything like that, because I do think people bring that energy to conversations like this, and I'm not doing that at all. Just in my experience, working with a lot of different lager yeasts, working in different breweries with lager yeast, And maybe I just haven't drank the right Lutra beer yet, but it's different. I think it's different. I don't know Nova Lager. I'm not familiar with that. You can do those things, but I think there's a difference between a beer that has a more traditional fermentation program and a more traditional lagering. Now, whether that is a 3-week cold, a 6-week cold, a 10-week cold lagering period, I think a lot of people are pulling their opinions out of their rears or out of history books. Okay, there's nothing wrong with pulling information out of history books. But sometimes people say, I lager for 6 weeks, and that's great. But I don't know if there's any difference in that beer between week 5, 6, and 7. Unless you're taking weekly notes on that and like with a panel and doing like hardcore sensory, or you can actually run it through a gas chromatograph so you can actually see what's going on, what's actually still in there, what's, get some science on it. But in my mind, no. In my mind, no. Lutra and I can't speak on Nova Lager, but Lutra does not make a lager for me. It can probably make a clean, crisp beer, but I think the profile is different. At least what I've experienced with it. Yeah, but that said, I'm a big proponent of people. They have their light lager that they're making in their pub, and they can't keep up with it. Stop calling it a lager. Call it your brewery's light. Call it Cartridge Light or Depot Light, and cool pitch it with Chico, and then ramp it up. And everybody that's going to be drinking that light beer, stop calling it a lager. It's a cool fermented ale. It'll drink how they want it to drink. Is it a lager? Hell no. But is it going to scratch the itch for what you're trying to do in your pub? Absolutely. All right. That's my take on it, Grant. Hopefully that makes sense. So, anyways. Checking in with the chat. Dancing Squirrel, you're welcome. Dancing Squirrel is Montana as beautiful as they say it is? Because I hear good things about that area. I think my wife said there was some national park or something that she wants to see someday. Part of one of our dreams. I mean, we're gonna have little kids in the house forever, but maybe because we have the older ones, we might be able to pawn them off one day. One of my dreams is to have a little camper van that would be suitable for me and the missus, and it would be my work vehicle, and we could kind of do road trips, and I can do brewery stuff as we go, like brew day stuff with people, and record content as we go, but then like build it around. She loves nature. She loves all the simple, beautiful things in life, and she would love to do that and be able to check out some national park stuff. So I've heard some good things about that area. So anyways, I did this next question folds in well with I just did a roundtable discussion, moderated a roundtable discussion with craft beer professionals, and some interesting stuff on that. So if you haven't checked it out, it's one of the most recent ones. Check out their YouTube channel, click videos, and it's a real recent one on trends in craft beer. So this question from Stargazer kind of spins off of that, and they ask, how do you decide whether a trend is worth chasing? I think if you want to pick two ends of the spectrum, and maybe maybe some of you tratty boys out there aren't going to like one of these answers, but you know, if you still hate hazy IPA, you might not like this answer. But how do you decide whether something is a trend or worth chasing? And we're going to measure this from one side being glitter in beer and the other side being hazy IPA. I've railed against both of these things, both of these trends in beer at some point in my life. I would probably still rail against glitter. I mean, I get it. It's fun. It's silly. It's quirky, whatever. But yeah, I mean, to me, that was not a trend worth chasing. And, you know, for a long time, people were hollering and moaning that hazy IPA was a trend, and it's not. And you don't have to like that style, but it has its own merit. It has its own merit. The refining of that style has given us a tremendous amount of information about different ways to use hops. So me personally, I'm grateful for the style because of what I've learned about hopping from making that beer style. You know what I mean? That can be applied in other ways. So how do you decide whether it's whether a trend is worth chasing? On some level, I feel like you have to know what your brewery is about. There are some breweries that are out there to be like trend chasers, and that's fine. That's a business model, right? There's some people that like kind of do like, hey, we do classic stuff, and then we do like fun little things here and there that we riff off of, but by and large you kind of get this standard catalog. That's fine as well. That's fine as well. I think it's really a decision that comes down to what's right for you and your brand. Does it make business sense for you? Is it true to what you want to be doing as a business owner and brewer? The glitter thing was actually something that made me laugh. I'm going to have Lee Lord on the, if I'm remembering the name correctly. I'm going to have her on the Industry Pro Pod here maybe before too long. And she was hilarious because she was the one that made me remember glitter in beer. I remember that glitter was a thing. But yeah, maybe down below you can drop any, what are some of the trends that have kind of come and gone? You know, I mean, there's been a million different iterations of IPA. It's only been hazy as one that stuck. I mean, really, really stuck, you know? But yeah, I don't know. I do think there's a difference between saying, hey, sometimes there's some beers that we keep on tap because they pay the bills. And then there's these beers that we have over here that we make because we love. And sometimes those beers are trend beers that are going to help you pay the bills. If you can follow a trend and make an affordable beer and it's going to sell, you can still do your double decocted, you know, 10-degree Czech pills or whatever your Czech lager, whatever you're doing. It's just a different way to do it. You know what I mean? So anyways, that's that. And that was from Stargazer. Thank you for the question. Let me see. Okay. Next question is from Pray for Our Country. And he says, or they say, I am new to dry yeast. I have a 7-barrel system. I'm getting tons of sulfur regardless of the yeast type. I give each batch 50 grams of yeast X. I have been adding oxygen. Could that be the issue? So if you check out the interview that I did with Dr. Matt Winans, who works for Fermentis, he's a PhD yeast guy. We kind of dive into some of this stuff. And, if you're not used to dry yeast is marketed as not needing to be rehydrated. It can just be pitched dry into your wort, into your cooled wort, as long as the density is not too high. Check your manufacturer's recommendations for that. And they also say that it doesn't need oxygen at that stage either. It would be on reharvest that you would need your oxygen. Okay. Who's the yeast manufacturer for our country? I will. You say that it's all ales. You say that you're using 50 grams of yeast X. And then Rizlord, who I've not seen, maybe I've not seen before. Rizlord is in here and wants to know what the tank pressure is at. That's another thing to consider. Are you fermenting it under pressure? Is it being bunged at any point like that? But my conversation with Richard Priest, another yeast guy from Escarpment, he was saying that when you're getting sulfur in your beer, or too much sulfur in your beer, Rizlord, Aussie brewer, here, love your stuff. Thanks, man. We got people all over the world, man. I want to get down there. But don't let me get too far afield before I start riffing on how I want to get to Australia. Yeah, he was saying that when you are getting a negative level of sulfur in your beer, it is happening on the hot side or on the cold side just prior to pitch or along with pitch, that you are not getting appropriate nutrient for that yeast strain. Okay, so that's where I would start. You've used both Safale and Omega. That would be my hunch, man, because you're talking about zero head pressure, other things that could, sometimes, or, people say, oh, are you keeping sulfur in there somehow? I would be getting with the manufacturer explicitly on it, because, when I was talking to the Fermentis guys, they're very specific with how they want you to use those strains. And I would say my gut is something needs to be addressed on that side, on the nutrient side. You didn't mention your pitching rate. I'm assuming your pitching rate is within the range, but it was interesting when I was talking to Dr. Winans about the Fermentis stuff, because he was doing the W06, which is like their wheat beer, their Hefestrain. He was saying you need to pitch on the low end of the range, and like it's very preferred to be on the low end of the range. And then he was saying with their Kale Ale, it's best to be on the higher end of the range. So I would actually hit him up and tell him what you have going on. Talk to him about what you're doing oxygen wise, nutrient wise, and pitching rate wise. They're going to want density, the volume, total volume of wort, the temperature that the wort was at, all that good stuff. 500 brick and 7 barrel. Just off the top, that seems like a reasonable range. But I would hit them up on the specific strains that you're using and how you're handling it. Now, you want to be able to take care of all those things up front. That's where I think that issue lies, is probably on the nutrient side. But hit them up. Now, again, talking to our the guests I've had on that are yeast guys, we have talked about sometimes making a transfer or getting some copper that has been cleaned and sanitized in contact with that beer. That will help to volatilize the sulfur that is in that beer, and you should be able to get it out. You can strip it out by pushing gas through your beer, stripping that sulfur into the headspace because it is so volatile, and then off gassing that headspace of your tank. You probably are going to be affecting flavors and aromas at that point, and potentially head retention, especially head retention and aroma, I would say, are your two most likely things that you could be impacting. But keep in mind, if you do the oxygen, if you do the copper thing, you can be introducing some oxygenation as well. But yeah. Anyways, quick note here. I think I'm being taunted by. I think I'm being taunted by somebody that the Lions are playing right now. It's preseason action. I'm a huge football fan. By the way, is there interest in an Adam Makes Beer Fantasy Football League? The only rule is that you have to be there for the draft live, and you have to actually draft your team. Lions are winning 17-10. Not that matters. Weird stats. I need to get and look at this usage, baby. I need to get in here and look at this usage, son. Gustavo, he's in. He didn't have any questions, but he was in for fantasy football. What I'm going to do is, if you follow me on Instagram, keep your eyes open. It's going to be a no money league or anything like that. It's just for the glory. I would love to have a 12 team ESPN league, and I'll probably put up a message on Instagram via story or something like that, and then have people DM me their email addresses. So, anyways, but yeah, pray for our country. That was my take on that. Hopefully that helps. I know it's not like the perfect answer, but it should get you going in the right direction. And it's a frustrating thing to have happen. Absolutely. Next up, I might need to take a little sip. I don't know what's going on, guys. I don't know if I have a mustache hair that is going up or if I have a nose hair that's going down. But like I am consistently like I have like an itch on my nose. I swear I have not picked up any bad habits from the way that I'm like constantly brushing my nose. Anyhow. Next question is from Left Side on YouTube. When is it worth propagating yeast in-house? I love questions like this. It is a great way to save money in the brewery. It is a great way to know that you have healthy, viable yeast in the brewery. There is a lot to love about yeast propagation in-house. Oh, pardon my yawn. My thoughts on yeast propagation are this. You need to have the gear to do it right. Okay? So, I would like to I personally would want to have a propagator that is pressurizable, stainless steel, something that I can CIP, sanitize just like any other tank, something that is temperature controlled, and something that I can easily infuse with oxygen during the prop portion, right? So, that's not everybody. If you have the equipment, I'm a big fan of doing it. I do want that small tank to have all those features because I want to be able to reliably clean, sanitize it, take samples off of it so I can do cell counts. and then be able to push it with CO2 into a tank. I want to be able to do all those things. Actually, you can go ahead and send me a DM right now and tell me that you're in for fantasy with your link. I will be posting a link on it though. And I'm going to be selecting a time and day, but you got to be there. I hate auto drafting. I want people to play with what they've drafted, not what Mike Clay has drafted. But yeah, that's when I think it's worth it. If you don't have the appropriate equipment to do what I think is a very sanitation sensitive thing, I don't want you doing it. Don't do it. You know what I mean? You can rig up kind of a double connection where, you know, you can knock out some wort out of a larger knockout into a smaller vessel, and then close that off once you get that filled, and then blast the rest into, or, you know, move the rest into your regular fermenter, pitch some yeast in there, get it growing up, doing its thing. I love that, but I only love it if you can do it right. If you don't have the technology for it, I really would prefer you not doing it. You can do it in smaller tanks. So, you know, like maybe putting a few barrels into like a smaller 7-barrel tank and then propping something up in there like that. Keep in mind, though, that you're probably not going to be hitting your temperature probe. So temperature control might not be, you know, fully on point. But yeah, I think having something specifically for it. And maybe, you know, like one of the really fancy homebrew, like 1-barrel systems might get it done for you, but you might need to have something closer to 3 barrels to do that. You know, run the math on what you would need for your system, and go from there with it. So yeah, that's my take. Left side. Rizlord says also yeast strain and beer styles come into play, and adjuncts too. What was that in reference to? Was that in reference to the propagation one we were just talking about, or the sulfur question? Let me know, Rizlord. Rizlord, have you been in here before? I think I would remember that name, but it's not I'm not remembering it right now. Remember, thanks everybody in the chat, everybody out there lurking. What's going on? Make sure to pop in the chat, say hi, drop any topics or any questions that you might have. Next question is from Therese on Instagram. Dancing Squirrel, gotta bounce, but love you and thanks for keeping it real. I'll watch the rest later for sure. Awesome, man. Good to see you in here. Good to see you in here. Question from Therese on Instagram. What skills should assistant brewers focus on building? If you are trying to build a career in this field, first of all, some of the skills that you should build. So let's go really practical. I would leverage free resources as much as possible to learn about all the nuts and bolts of what's going on in your brewery. I would learn how to rebuild pumps. I would learn basic things about boiler systems, basic things about glycol chillers, just your basic maintenance stuff. I'm not going to say too much on electrical, because electrical can get you in a lot of trouble in a hurry. Deep dive, CIP, flow rates, temperature, chemical rates, titration, things like that. Understand all those things. If you can get forklift certified, do that. If you can learn how to wash draft lines, learn how to do that. You are in knowledge acquisition stage. So from a technical standpoint, learn as much as you can. You can say all the same things for the brewing side. If you are working for people that don't mind being asked why, and make sure that we watch our tones when we say that, because we don't want it to sound like, why are we doing that? Be curious. Hey, I don't know why we do this, and I want to know. I'm interested, right? Stuff like that. Rizlord was a silent watcher, but today was the day. Today was the day, Rizlord. Welcome to the little fam here. Glad you chimed in. But and then obviously the brewing side stuff. Yeah, understand as many things as you can there, but learn things that make you indispensable. Learn things that make you valuable. Flip side is you can have all those things and be horrible to work with because you're miserable, you're mean, you're selfish, you're temperamental. I think skills that assistant brewers should focus on, you need some work on yourself too. Get better, become more disciplined, become more patient. Work on developing your character. Become less subordinate to your anger or your frustration. Don't only speak the truth when you're angry, right? Just a few things like that. But no, I mean, think about the things that an employer wants. And think about the type of places that you want to go. Did you apprentice in, and the kind of brewery that you're going to want to work at long-term requires a degree? Find out. See if that is going to be, part of your path, right? How far up do you want to go? In some places, head brewers and all that different than lead brewers and all that different than brewers and all that different than assistant brewers. Sometimes they're just names, But yeah. That's kind of my short hot take on some skills that you should be developing as an assistant brewer. If there's anything else in there that you think I missed, drop it in the comments. Let me know. Let me know in the chat. Yeah. Appreciate the question, Therese. Gustavo, when you say HB, do you mean homebrewing? I'm assuming so by answering by that question. Gustavo asks, what activities would you implement to boost the homebrewing community in my city? We just had a comp, but few people submitted beers. What perspective do you have on that? I think it's interesting because, I think a homebrew community, a homebrew club, a brew pub, a restaurant, on some level, they're looking to do something similar. They're looking to actually create community. I think you just need to brew publicly at somebody's house. At somebody's house has a big garage, big driveway. Have it be a community thing. I don't know what it's like in your neighborhood, but maybe you have one of those neighborhoods where you can have the everybody bring a dish, you have the barbecue, you know what I mean? And you just have some neighborhood people over and you got food over here, but also you're going to brew that day. You're brewing on your homebrew system, right? So you can get to spend time with people. Invite people. I would also, you mentioned you're on Instagram. I would be posting the stuff that you're doing on Instagram, just to let people know that you're doing it. When you meet somebody and you tell them that you're home brewing, you can give them your Instagram handle and they can see what you're brewing. You know what I mean? So that might be an interesting way to go. The American Homebrewers Association, I know, has been going through some changes, and I believe they're now separate from the Brewers Association. They might have some good tips and tricks too. I would check them out. But yeah, I mean, I think the same way it is with anything. It's building community. It's meeting people, inviting people, and showing people that what you're doing is fun and can be a positive. So that would be my take on it, Gustavo. I appreciate the question. Yeah. All right. Next question is from Chris on IG. What is your approach to building a lager recipe? This question is pretty broad, and at first I thought that was a problem, and then I realized every problem is just an opportunity, baby. So here's the deal. I like this because, and maybe it's just my own, my own nostalgia for beer, my own upbringing in beer. But lager to me almost always inherently means simple. It's how I like to do them. It's probably the area where I get like the most like history nerdy about my beer and what I want done with them. Now, I don't have any problem like making like modern variations or whatever, but yeah, I love my traditional lagers, and I like that approach to be simple. I know everybody gets to. I think the most like Reinheitsgebot quotable thing is almost always the lager thing. There's 4 things that's in this beer. It's water, yeast, hops, and barley. Malted barley or whatever. That's awesome. But I do love a simple approach. My approach in general with beer is pretty simple though. Lean on a ton of base malt, something that's suitable for what you're doing. Me personally, when I am making a version of a European lager, I like to use malt from the area. I think there's a difference. There's terroir, baby. I like to. I like to use, in general, low amounts of crystal malt, especially in lager beers. Sometimes I'll use something a little bit crystally, and maybe a little bit we'll get into like a darker colored Märzen or something like that. But I usually like to not introduce a lot of additional residual sweetness in a lot of these beers because I like them to be dry. Also, me personally, because I do like to make them on the drier side of the style. One of the reasons I like to do that is I feel as if it allows me to hit the lower end of the range of the IBU scale for that beer. I personally think that makes a very approachable beer for a wider range of people. And as somebody that is employed to have people drink the beer that I'm making, I think a wide range of people wanting to be or being able to drink that beer in volume is a good thing. I love, if we're going to do a lager, and, I did talk on this a little bit before, but if we're doing a lager, just use a lager yeast. There's a lot of lager yeast that you can do different things with, different temperature ranges, different pitching ranges, things like that. But, I would love for you to go ahead and use something along the lines of the Augustiner strain. There's a handful of labs out there that have something Augustiner like. I've used Harvest from Imperial. It's great. It's a great lager strain. I think it's a real malt magnifier. So I love that as a baseline for me. Anytime I'm starting with any lager style, I love a version of it brewed with that yeast strain. My approach to some process stuff I love to get as much CO2 in solution as I can without carbing it up in the bright tank. So during lagering, head pressure, spoonding, all good things. We'll actually be talking about spoonding here in just a second. But Chris, those are some of my approaches. I do like to keep things traditional on the hop side as well. You can go outside of that and play with it and have fun. There's no problems, but a nice traditional approach. I do want to lean on subtlety with these beers. I think so often as a brewer from the United States, we tend to address recipe formulation with a sledgehammer as opposed to a paintbrush, right? I don't know if that's been said before, but if it hasn't been, verbal copyright, Adam Mills, Adam Makes Beer. I liked it. But yeah, Chris, that's my take. Just kind of big picture general stuff on build and lager. Those are some of the things I like to do. So yeah, appreciate the question. Riz Lord, so I'm gonna disappoint you a little bit here because those hop compounds that you're listing, obviously I recognize them as hop compounds. I'm not the biggest ace when it comes to stuff like this, but I'll give you a little swing at this, and maybe this will scratch yes, maybe it won't, but I'm appreciate you putting the question. This question is from Riz Lord. What's the go for getting or what's the go-to for getting the maximum amount of terpenes from hops and yeast for flavors like geraniol, linalool, and citronella? Good question. Yeah, and I might disappoint you, dude. When we're there's terpene products out on the market right now. Abstracts has them. A bunch of other places has them. I can't vouch for any of them because I haven't really used them. I've talked to some people that have. They seem to like them. When you're looking to max those things out, I do think you're going to end up using a combination of hops that are going to be featuring those hop compounds that are high in those hop compounds, so you can kind of shop around for those fractionals in different lots of hops, and then look at taking them over the top with potentially one of these terpene or other hop extracts, these flowable hop extracts that are available now for cold side use. I would like to introduce that concept if we haven't talked about it today, but where you do want to be able to layer with some T90. You do want some grain matter in there. I do think it's important for establishing balance in those beers that green matter is going to be bringing a key polyphenol component that keeps it balanced and beery. Otherwise, things can get a little flabby. You can lose some of the balance contributing factors that late hopping, dry hopping can give to a beer. So yeah, but maybe layer those up and play with those. So that's kind of my take on that, Riz Lord. JT, what's up, Adam? Good to see you in here, JT. It's a cute dog on your logo pic. Hope you're doing well. Gustavo, what's your favorite sour beer or any recipe you want to share with us? Well, I tell you what, on the recipe side, man, go back, look at, Riz Lord, I would look at some of the liquid terpenes that you can be adding on the back end. I would look up, start with abstracts, ABSTRAX. If you're anything like my Instagram, algorithm, you see 5,000 stories from them a day. in your story feed. So they're definitely pumping up the word on what they're doing over there. But yeah, it might be worth a look. Gustavo, as far as sharing recipes, dude, check out go to the YouTube channel playlist, all the brew days, like all my old school cartridge brew days. Every single one of them has full recipes in it, and there's a whole range of styles in there. Okay, so that would be probably the most time sensitive way to do that. Probably be the best use of time in order to do that. But what's my favorite sour beer? I'll show a little love to, and maybe it's cliche to say, but I 12 years ago, maybe 14 years ago. Oh geez, maybe it was 14 years ago. 2011. It was 14 years ago, dude. Why was I saying 12? I'm crazy. I did a long weekend in Belgium with a couple of good friends, and went to Cantillon and cried over their beer, man. I was aware of their history, the style. I'm a history nerd. I love it. It was overwhelming, and I'm not even gonna act like it was the jet lag that got to me. I got to talk to Jean Van Wall, the brewmaster. It ended up his sister was the person that was getting us our beers all afternoon, and they. So I'll say this is my favorite beer. She went and they got I was talking to Jean, and his sister came up. I didn't realize it was his sister at the time. And they start speaking, I believe, in French together. I don't know French, but she asked him a question. She told him something and gestured to me. And then she asked him a question, and he said Cuvée, which is like Grand Reserve. I knew that. And he nodded. And then we talked a little bit longer, went back and sat down. And then she brought over to the table an 8-year-old bottle of their goose on the house. We had sat there and drank every beer that they have on the menu. They're small pours. They're all 5%. They're small. The beers were gorgeous. The experience was gorgeous. And my favorite sour beer ever was that 7-year-old, kind of Grand Reserve goose that they had. And it made me cry. I'm not going to lie. I was huddled over in the corner. The technology was old back then. I was taking audio notes on a BlackBerry, maybe. So, but it was beautiful, man. I learned a lot from it, going there and tasting all those different beers, and then starting to learn, oh, well, they're brewers, but they're blenders as much as anything, right? Because they're capturing and they're maintaining that flavor, that house character of what they do. House character might seem a little glib, but I think it's, every sour house should have their character, right? Yeah. And then on top of it, she watched me crying over it. And she asked my buddies who I was with, which were checking out, buying swag and whatever. They asked why I was crying over their beer. And they told them what my deal was, what my problem was. And so when I went up and I bought some cheese that was washed in the Cantillon beer and some glasses, some beer glasses, I said, how much? And she shoved them across the counter, and she said, for you, they're free. So all you got to do is just go over there and cry over their beer, man, and they'll really treat you right. But yeah, man, that's my favorite sour beer. And part of it is, obviously Cantillon's an all-time great, but the experience was and the beer was great. Don't get me wrong, but the experience was just as good. It's something I'll never forget. So yeah. Yeah, JT, he said he was a great dog. Sorry to hear that, man. Well, glad he was a great dog. Sorry you don't have him anymore. He says, I saw Sonder in the lineup for a brew fest. Our brewery is attending in Indiana, August 31st. Any chance you're attending? JT, no, I do not work for Sonder anymore. I was laid off back in October of last year, and I have been full time in it on the content side of things. So no, but show them some love. Get over there and try their beers. They make good beers. They make good beers, and they've got good people. So I don't know if there's going to be any brewery people going to that one. What's the name of the festival? Yeah. But no, they got some good folks and some good beer over there. So shout out to all my Sonder people. Next question is from Timmy Tim on YouTube. Hey, Timmy Tim, you mentioned spunding or spunding in the brew day with Market Garden. There's the full Hefeweizen brew day video at Market Garden Brewery up in Cleveland, up in Seatown. You need to check it out. It's a fun one. How do you typically sponge your beers? Thank you for asking. Typically, I spun my lagers. I tend to personally prefer not to spund my beers I'm going to dry hop, just because I don't like the increased risk of maybe getting a hop geyser with something like that. But anything that's not getting a dry hop, lagers, typically I like to let and pay attention to this. The not like 75% attenuation, but like 75% of the attenuation. Okay, so if I say that, like, if there's like 20% left of attenuation to go, whatever your expected attenuation is going to be, getting that spunding valve there at also at a point where you're not going to be kicking any yeast or krausen out of your tank as well. I do not like setting up a spunding valve while there's matter being kicked out beyond the gas. I don't like that. So I don't want to get that plugged and have a bad situation happen. But in general, I like to run those around 15 psi or 1 bar. And so you get it on the tail end of fermentation. You're past the point where you have any blow off. And just slap it on there and engage it, and let that thing start pressuring up. I do think it's important to check your spunding valves frequently, as far as when they are blowing off. So like pressure test them for whatever pressure you want them blowing off at. I think that's really important. It is also important to fully clean and sanitize those things, just like anything else on your fermenter. What else? Yeah, I do like that higher range, getting that closed off there, and then allowing that fermentation to run down as you're maintaining that higher pressure. I do very strongly believe that it helps with better foam, better head retention, using less gas. It's beautiful if you can get almost all of your gas in there, right? Or all of your CO2 in that beer. But then something that can be a little slept on when it comes to your spunding practices, you go out of your way to keep the CO2 in solution, and then you just rip it into your bright tank really, really fast. Make sure to maintain a gentle flow rate or transfer rate when you are moving that beer into the bright, because you don't want to be dropping that CO2 out of it, blasting it, foaming that beer, anything like that. But that's typically what I do. Sometimes I'm a little more wary of like really expressive yeast strains, and what the effects might be on that. If you are, if you have and this is just, I'm just riffing. I could be wrong. If it's a hef, if it's a saison, some sensitive yeast strains, maybe spunding might have an effect on it. I don't know. I have a character effect on it. Not quite sure. but just some things to think about, and generally how I work utilizing that Spunding valve. I appreciate the question, Timmy Tim. Pray for our country. Do you still enjoy going to festivals? I enjoy seeing people. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I haven't drank beer in 2 years. I have a pretty severe, I have a pretty severe like inflammatory thing. I've over the last couple of years, I have very rigorously tracked what I eat food diary wise to see what I can and can't eat just by how my body responds to it. And I've kind of figured out that I can't do gluten. I can't do processed food. I need to avoid a lot of preservatives, including a lot of things in cured meats, which breaks my heart. And it's been really, really tough. But all that aside, I can't drink beer at festivals. I think I'm fine with that. Increasingly, I'm excited to see the people that are there, the brewers that I know, so I can smell their beer at least, talk to them about their beers, how they're doing personally. More and more, it becomes about the people. So don't get me wrong, like working a festival does not sound like fun. I've worked plenty of festivals and I've had a wide range of experience at them, as anybody has that has been in this industry. And they can be fun, but if you're approaching it like work, it can be a lot. It can be a lot. So anyways. Oh, JT, that's no worries. Well, first of all, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's no bad about it, dude. I mean, things happen in this industry. People get let go. You know what I mean? Businesses, craft isn't at the peak right now. You know what I mean? So, we hear places all the time that are struggling. So it happens. And, I've been blessed by the fact that my wife is amazing. She's a nurse. She makes good money. And so we were able to flip a switch, and I was able to do stay-at-home dad, and with my remaining time, work, on the content stuff. So, that's what we're doing. My goal is to have her working less, because that's her goal too. I'm passionate about what I do. She's an amazing nurse. By the way, my wife was Nurse of the Year, and she was a part-timer when she was doing it. Just to brag on her, she's sensational. She's a special person. And yeah. So anyways, can't you sip and spit? I might be able to, Rich. But the flip side is I feel so bad. My body feels so bad, and my anxiety gets so bad. Like physical pain, mental pain, man. I don't know. If I ever got back into a situation where I was brewing for a place again, I would probably use Brewer's Clerics, and I would probably do some sip and spit with that. But yeah, I would have to see. I'm very, very tight with what I eat. We basically just buy like food and then we cook it. I mean, it's not a bad rule of thumb anyways. I think we all know there's certain things we should be and shouldn't be eating, but for me, it just has such a profound impact on me, both physically and mentally, that it's some things are just out of bounds for me. Next question is from Chad on Instagram. Chad is not his real name, but we kind of had this conversation surrounding this topic, and I wanted to sort it out with him. And he said, "What are you seeing as trends? I work at a place that has a lot of international guests and out-of-towners. They're looking for low ABV beer, 3%, stouts, brown ales, kind of traditional things. And even as far as cocktails, it seems like they're fine with like cheaper cocktails as opposed to like higher end, like craft cocktails. He just kind of wants to know what my take is on it. I think increasingly people are just looking for what they want to drink. I do think that there is obviously some demand for some lower ABV. Obviously, NA is popping off to whatever extent NA is going to pop off to. The low ABV thing is happening. Sometimes these traditional beers, but remember, and if you're talking international people, there can be a lower ABV culture in different areas. So when they're coming into your spot, yeah, maybe they do want those lower ABV things and some of the things that we might not necessarily see as craft in our space. How much is a trend? I think low ABV is going to be with us for a little while. I think low ABV beers are great. I'm a big believer in them. I would much rather drink, a 3.5% bitter than a 9% barley wine. That's just me, right? But yeah, I think that we're always going to see ebbs and flows. The NA stuff, the low alcohol stuff, I think is there. I think people want approachable things. They want flavors that they know, flavors that are nostalgic as well. But nobody wants to drink what their parents are drinking. Every generation rejects what the one before them is drinking. And you hear a lot of stuff about, would it be Gen Z, or Gen Z is not drinking? First of all, half of Gen Z isn't old enough to drink, which does impact those numbers. And then, when you look at historical data, people usually don't start spending on alcohol until they're 25, when they start making a little bit more money. They get a little bit more settled. And not to get into a whole economic discussion here or anything like that, but I think we are going to see some things ebb and flow from a business standpoint, from a brewer standpoint. What are the things that you can do that can make your pub still interesting to be there? What are those items that you can have that pay the bills? And what are those items that you can brew that you can still love? Now, I will say this. Anytime we're making beer, regardless of whatever kind of new trendy thing it is, we always need to love our process and get satisfaction out of turning wort well, out of CIPing, cellaring, yeast counting well. The nuts and bolts of what we do should be a primary driver of our career joy. All right. When we get to make things we love, that can be a cherry on top. But sometimes you got to make some things that you love less, but still bring the heat with it, people. You know what I mean? So yeah, don't let sometimes the fact that you feel like some of the craft is leaving steal your soul, right? Because listen, very few people have what we have. How many people do what they're passionate about? Almost nobody, right? I almost feel like I set my kids up for failure because they've got to see me have a career that I'm passionate in. And it's like, well, dude, sometimes you just got to pay some bills. You know what I mean? But that's kind of my take, man. Love the fact that you love what you do. And some things you just love a little bit more than others, right? But keep the drive. Keep the drive. JT says, love that man. My fiance is a vet nurse. I have huge respect for her and everyone in the medical field, as much of a passion-driven field as brewing. Absolutely. Absolutely, JT. Absolutely. Well, listen, people. It's I'm not gonna lie, man. The last month was a wild ride. A lot of stuff going on personally, professionally. We'll see where the rest of the year has things going. I might have some cool things coming up with GABF, some fun guests to talk to. As always, one of the main thing I really want to build here is I want to help facilitate your growth as brewers. And there's some ways that I can do that myself. But I always want you to let me know how you want to be growing as a brewer, areas you need to be growing in, because then I can research, I can find people to talk to, and we can get there together, right? I'm passionate about helping everybody take that next step with what we're doing in this field. So anyways, like I said, I'll be interviewing Justin Crossley of the Brewing Network and Hop Grenade next week. Keep an ear out for that. Stay connected on my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that. But honestly, Instagram is probably best. And make sure to show some love to my friends at Blickman and at Brewed Fiscally if you have any brewing equipment or accounting needs for your business. Anyhow, hope you all have a great night, and we'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.